The autumn wind swept through the streets of Columbus, Ohio, carrying bright orange leaves across the pavement. At 6 every morning, Daniel Carter climbed into his 15-year-old pickup truck and started another day of hard work. The engine coughed twice before finally coming to life. "So far, so good," Daniel muttered with a smile. From the passenger seat, 8-year-old Lily giggled. "I think Betsy likes you." Daniel laughed. The truck had been nicknamed Betsy years ago by his late wife, Emily. Even after 3 years, he couldn't bring himself to change the name. Life hadn't been easy since Emily lost her battle with cancer. Daniel worked 2 construction jobs during the week and spent weekends fixing fences, repairing roofs or painting houses, anything to keep food on the table. Money disappeared almost as quickly as he earned it. Some nights, he quietly skipped dinner so Lily could have seconds. She never noticed, and Daniel intended to keep it that way. To Lily, her father wasn't poor. He was simply the strongest man in the world. As they arrived at Lincoln Elementary School, Lily hugged him tightly. "Don't forget," she said with a grin. "What?" "My spelling test today." "Oh, that's right. And if I get 100%, you'll want pancakes for dinner." She smiled proudly. "You remember everything." Daniel knelt beside her. "I remember everything that matters." Lily kissed his cheek before running toward the school entrance. Daniel watched until she disappeared inside. Only then did he drive away to another long day of work. By late afternoon, Daniel's back ached from replacing shingles on an old apartment building. His hands were covered in dust, and his boots felt twice as heavy as they had that morning. Before picking Lily up from after-school care, he stopped at Harper's Market to buy milk, eggs, bread, and peanut butter, the only groceries he could afford until payday. The supermarket was busy. Shopping carts rolled through crowded aisles, while people rushed to finish before dinner. As Daniel joined the checkout line, something caught his attention. An elderly woman stood at the register with only a few simple items in her basket: a loaf of bread, a carton of milk, canned soup, oatmeal, and a small bouquet of white daisies. She looked to be in her late 70s. Her gray coat had been carefully mended several times. Though her clothes were old, they were spotless. The cashier smiled politely. "That'll be $28.43. The woman opened her worn leather purse. Her smile faded. She counted a few dollar bills. "Then some coins." Then searched every pocket. "Oh, no." Her hands trembled. "I'm so sorry." A quarter slipped from her fingers and rolled across the floor. The people waiting behind her groaned. One impatient man looked at his watch. "Seriously?" Another woman sighed loudly. "If you don't have enough money, don't hold everyone up." A younger customer chuckled. This is exactly why self-checkout exists. The elderly woman's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry," she whispered again. She slowly reached into her basket. "I'll put the flowers back." She held the daisies close for one last moment before setting them aside. Daniel noticed the sadness in her eyes. Those flowers clearly meant something. Without saying a word, he stepped out of line. He walked to the cashier and placed his debit card on the counter. "I'll take care of everything." The entire checkout area fell silent. The elderly woman looked up in surprise. "Oh, no, dear," she said quickly. "I couldn't ask you to do that." Daniel smiled gently. "You didn't." He nodded toward the daisies. "My wife loved flowers, too." For a brief moment, the woman's expression changed. "You lost your wife?" 3 years ago." She lowered her eyes. "I lost my husband 6 years ago." Neither of them spoke for several seconds. No words were needed. They both understood what loneliness felt like. The cashier finished the transaction and handed Daniel the receipt. He picked up the bouquet of daisies and placed it carefully back into the woman's hands. "I think these belong with you." A tear rolled down her cheek. "My husband used to bring me daisies every Friday. For 48 years. Daniel smiled. "Then I think he'd want you to keep smiling every Friday." The elderly woman covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face. "My name is Margaret." "I'm Daniel." She squeezed his hand. "You have a very kind heart." Daniel simply shrugged. "My daughter says kindness is free." As Daniel turned to leave, he had no idea that someone near the entrance had quietly recorded the entire moment on a mobile phone. Nor did he know that the woman he had just helped was the mother of one of America's most powerful billionaires. That simple act of kindness was about to change his life forever. Daniel picked up his grocery bag and started walking toward the exit. Before he reached the doors, he heard a gentle voice behind him. "Daniel, please wait." He turned around. Margaret hurried after him, holding the bouquet of daisies against her chest. "I've never accepted charity in my life," she said. "Please let me repay you." Daniel smiled kindly. "You don't owe me anything, but you spent money you probably needed." Daniel chuckled. "My daughter would never forgive me if I walked away." Margaret looked puzzled. "Lily believes every person deserves to be treated with kindness," he explained. "If she found out I ignored someone who needed help, she'd be disappointed in me." Margaret's eyes filled with tears again. "You've raised a wonderful little girl." "I've tried." Outside, Daniel noticed Margaret struggling to carry her groceries. "I'll drive you home," he offered. "Oh, I couldn't trouble you." "It's no trouble at all." After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. During the short drive through a quiet neighborhood on the edge of Columbus, they talked like old friends. Margaret spoke about her late husband, Robert. "He was a high school history teacher for 38 years, she said with a smile. "He believed the world could always be made better with one good deed." Daniel smiled. "I think he was right." "And your wife?" Daniel looked out of the windshield. "Emily was a nurse. She spent her life taking care of other people." "I'm sorry for your loss." "So am I." For a few moments, the truck was filled with comfortable silence. When they arrived, Daniel parked in front of a small white house. Time had not been kind to it. The paint had faded. The porch steps were cracked. One railing leaned dangerously to one side. Margaret noticed him staring. "My husband always handled repairs," she said quietly. "Since he passed, I've just managed the best I could." Daniel climbed out of the truck and carried the groceries inside. As he stepped back onto the porch, one of the wooden boards bent beneath his weight with a loud crack. He frowned. "Margaret, someone could get hurt." She gave a small shrug. "I know. I'll fix it." She laughed softly. "You've already done enough today." "No," Daniel replied. "Today I bought groceries. Saturday I'll fix your porch." "You don't have to." "I know. But I'm still coming." Margaret watched him drive away. For the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't expected to feel again. Hope. That evening, Lily sat at the kitchen table doing homework while Daniel made grilled cheese sandwiches. "Dad?" "Yeah, sweetheart?" "Did anything nice happen today?" Daniel smiled. "I met a lady named Margaret." "What was she like?" "Lonely." Lily stopped writing. "Is she somebody's grandma?" "I think so." "Then we should visit her." Daniel laughed. "We're fixing her porch this Saturday." Lily's face lit up. "Can I help?" "You'll probably be the boss." "I already am," she said proudly. They both burst into laughter. Neither of them knew that across town, Margaret was looking at an old family photograph and whispering, "Victoria, I wish you could meet this man." Her daughter, Victoria Whitmore, was one of America's wealthiest businesswomen. But Margaret had never told Daniel. To her, he had shown kindness without expecting anything in return. And she wanted to keep it that way. Saturday morning arrived with bright sunshine and crisp autumn air. At exactly 8 o'clock, Daniel's old pickup truck rolled into Margaret's driveway. The bed of the truck was filled with lumber, paint, screws, and a battered red toolbox. Lily jumped out first. She carried a small paper bag. "I brought chocolate chip cookies," she announced proudly. Margaret opened the front door and laughed. "I've been looking forward to seeing both of you." She hugged Lily gently before inviting them inside for lemonade. "I'll start on the porch," Daniel said. "We'll have it safe before lunch." For the next several hours, Daniel worked without stopping. He replaced every broken step. He installed a sturdy new handrail. He reinforced the porch floor and repaired the loose gutter that had leaked for months. Whenever he needed a screwdriver or a handful of nails, Lily was already beside him. "Assistant Lily reporting for duty," she said proudly. Margaret couldn't stop smiling. The quiet house that had felt empty for years was suddenly filled with laughter. It reminded her of the days when her husband, Robert, was still alive. Around noon, a teenage neighbor named Ethan walked outside to collect his mail. He noticed Daniel working while Lily handed him tools, and Margaret watched from a rocking chair with tears of happiness in her eyes. Without disturbing anyone, Ethan recorded a short video on his phone. It wasn't staged. It wasn't planned. It was simply a father and daughter helping an elderly stranger because it was the right thing to do. That evening, Ethan uploaded the 60-second clip online with a simple caption. This single dad spent his Saturday repairing an elderly woman's porch for free. Heroes don't always wear capes. Within hours, thousands of people had shared it. By the next morning, the video had been viewed over 3 million times. Comments flooded in from across the country. Someone give this man a medal. His daughter is learning what real kindness looks like. We need more fathers like him. Does anyone know who he is? Daniel had no idea. He didn't own social media. While millions of people were praising him online, he was helping Lily study for her spelling test and preparing for another week of work. Hundreds of miles away in New York City, Victoria Whitmore stepped out of a board meeting after receiving a message from one of her assistants. You should see this video. Victoria almost ignored it. She received hundreds of messages every day, but when she pressed play, her heart skipped a beat. She recognized the house immediately. It was her mother's. She watched the video again. Then a third time. There was a tired-looking construction worker rebuilding the porch with careful hands. Beside him, a little girl smiled every time her father thanked her for helping. Neither of them knew they were being filmed. Neither of them asked for recognition. Victoria immediately called her mother. Mom, who is that man? Margaret smiled as she looked out at her newly repaired porch. His name is Daniel Carter. The same man who bought your groceries? Yes. And he refused to let you pay him back? He said kindness isn't something you sell. Victoria became silent. For years, people had been kind to her because of her wealth and influence. But this man hadn't known who her mother was. He had simply seen an elderly woman who needed help. Victoria looked at the frozen image of Daniel and Lily on her screen. Then she made a decision. She canceled every meeting on Monday. Book me the first flight to Columbus, she told her assistant. I want to meet the man who reminded my mother and the whole country what kindness really looks like. Daniel had no idea that before another week had passed, his life was about to change forever. Tuesday afternoon, Daniel parked outside Lincoln Elementary. Just as he did every day, parents gathered near the front entrance, chatting while they waited for their children. Daniel leaned against his old pickup truck, sipping a cup of black coffee from a paper cup. His phone buzzed. It was Margaret. Hello, Margaret. Daniel, I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all. I wanted to tell you. My daughter is visiting from New York. That's wonderful. She insists on meeting you? Daniel smiled. Well, I'd be happy to. If you have time, would you join us for dinner tonight? Daniel glanced toward the school doors. He looked at his worn work boots, dusty jeans, and faded flannel shirt. I don't exactly look ready for dinner. Margaret laughed. My daughter won't care. After a brief pause, Daniel replied, All right. Lily and I will be there. That evening, Daniel and Lily stopped by a local bakery. Lily carefully chose a homemade apple pie. Dad, she whispered, we can't show up empty-handed. Daniel smiled. Your mom used to say the same thing. As they drove to Margaret's house, Lily held the pie tightly on her lap. I hope her daughter likes pie. I'm sure she will. When they arrived, the front door opened before Daniel could knock. Margaret greeted them with a warm hug. You came. Wouldn't miss it, Daniel replied. The smell of roast chicken filled the house. Everything looked warm and welcoming. Just then, footsteps echoed from the hallway. A tall woman in her early 40s walked into the living room. She wore simple blue jeans and a cream-colored sweater. There were no designer logos, no expensive jewelry. Nothing suggested she was one of the wealthiest women in America. She smiled warmly. You must be Daniel. And you must be Victoria. They shook hands. Thank you, Victoria said sincerely. For what? For giving my mother something money couldn't buy. Daniel looked confused. I only fixed a porch. Victoria gently shook her head. No. You gave her hope. The room fell quiet. Dinner was filled with laughter. Lily entertained everyone with stories about school. Margaret hadn't smiled so much in years. Victoria watched Daniel closely. He never complained. He always made sure Lily's plate was full before serving himself. When Margaret tried to clear the dishes, Daniel stood immediately. "You cooked," he said. "I'll clean." "You don't have to." "I know." "But I will." Victoria couldn't remember the last time she'd met someone so genuinely thoughtful. After dinner, Victoria stepped onto the porch with Daniel while Lily helped Margaret slice the pie. "I saw the video online," Victoria admitted. "It reached millions of people." Daniel looked surprised. "What video?" "The one of you repairing my mother's porch." "I didn't even know someone recorded it." Victoria smiled. "I believe you." She took a deep breath. "Daniel, there's something you should know. My mother never tells people this because she wants to be treated like everyone else." Daniel listened quietly. "I'm the founder and CEO of Whitmore Technologies." Daniel stared at her for a moment. "The company that's always on the news?" She nodded. "Yes." He smiled politely. "Well, that's impressive." Then he simply shrugged. "I'm glad your mom has someone successful to be proud of." Victoria blinked. That was it. No excitement. No questions about money. No requests for favors. Just happiness for her mother. For the first time in years, Victoria felt certain that Daniel's kindness had never been motivated by what he could gain. As she looked at the humble single father standing beside her, she made a silent promise. She was going to help him, but she would do it in a way that protected his dignity. Little did Daniel know, the biggest surprise of his life was only days away. The next morning, Daniel woke before sunrise, just as he always did. He packed Lily's lunch, braided her hair the way Emily had taught him, and drove her to school. As Lily climbed out of the truck, she smiled. "Tell Grandma Margaret I said thank you for the pie." "I will," Daniel laughed. Then he headed to another construction site, expecting an ordinary day. He had no idea someone was about to change his future. Meanwhile, Victoria sat in a conference room at Whitmore Technologies' regional office in Columbus. Several executives waited around the table. One of them asked, "So why are we here?" Victoria placed a folder on the table. "I found someone I'd like to hire." The room fell silent. One executive raised an eyebrow. "What's his background?" "Construction." "What degree does he have?" "None." Another executive frowned. "Then why would we hire him?" Victoria looked around the room. "Because skills can be taught." She paused. "But integrity can't." She showed them the viral video. Then she shared everything her mother had told her. "When this man helped my mother, he didn't know who she was. He wasn't chasing attention or money. He simply saw a human being who needed help." The room grew quiet. Victoria continued, "Our company has lost something over the years. We've become so focused on profits that we've forgotten people." She closed the folder. "I want Daniel Carter to lead our new community outreach and facilities program." One executive looked surprised. "A construction worker?" "A leader," Victoria corrected. That afternoon, Daniel received an unexpected phone call. "Mr. Carter?" "Speaking." "This is Victoria Whitmore." "Oh, hello. I was wondering if you could stop by our Columbus office tomorrow morning." Daniel hesitated. "Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine. I just have a proposal I'd like you to hear." Daniel agreed, though he couldn't imagine why a billionaire businesswoman wanted to meet him again. The following morning, Daniel stood in front of the sleek glass headquarters of Whitmore Technologies. He looked down at his faded work boots. He almost turned around. "This place isn't for people like me," he whispered. Just then, Victoria walked through the front doors herself. "It is today," she said with a smile. She led him upstairs to a conference room overlooking the city. After a few minutes of conversation, she slid a folder across the table. "I'd like to offer you a job." Daniel looked confused. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else." "I haven't." He opened the folder. The salary was nearly 3 times what he currently earned. There was health insurance, paid holidays, retirement benefits, and flexible hours that would allow him to spend evenings with Lily. Daniel stared at the page. I can't accept charity. Victoria smiled gently. This isn't charity. It's a job. You've spent years building homes and helping people. I need someone who understands both. Daniel remained silent. I don't have a business degree, he finally said. No, Victoria replied. But you have something far more valuable. You've earned people's trust. She leaned forward. I can teach management. I can't teach character. Daniel's eyes filled with emotion. For the first time since Emily had passed away, he saw a future that wasn't filled with constant worry. Still, he looked up and asked one question. If I take this job, will it be because I earned it? Victoria smiled. No, Daniel. It'll be because you already proved you deserved it. Daniel closed the folder and smiled for the first time in a long while. I'd be honored. Neither of them noticed that someone outside the conference room had overheard the conversation. And not everyone was happy about Victoria's decision. Daniel accepted the position, but he insisted on one thing. I don't want special treatment. Victoria smiled. You won't get any. He laughed. I was hoping you'd say that. 3 weeks later, Daniel officially started as Director of Community Outreach and Facilities at Whitmore Technologies. Although the title sounded impressive, Daniel still arrived before everyone else each morning. He greeted the security guards by name. He shared coffee with the maintenance staff. He even helped move office furniture instead of calling someone else to do it. The employees quickly noticed something different. Their new director treated the janitor with the same respect he showed the executives. Not everyone appreciated the change. One senior executive, Richard Collins, had worked at Whitmore Technologies for nearly 15 years. He had expected to be promoted to the very position Daniel now held. To Richard, Daniel was nothing more than the construction worker from the internet. He doesn't belong here, Richard complained during a management meeting. Victoria remained calm. Why? He has no MBA, no corporate experience, no executive background. Victoria folded her hands. But he has something our company has been missing. And what's that? Integrity. Richard wasn't convinced. He decided to prove Victoria had made a mistake. A week later, Richard created a problem. He secretly authorized the purchase of cheap building materials for a community center that Whitmore Technologies had promised to renovate. The lower quality materials would save the company thousands of dollars and earn Richard a large performance bonus. He assumed Daniel would simply sign the paperwork. Instead, Daniel inspected the delivery himself. Within minutes, he realized something was wrong. He compared the materials with the approved plans. They didn't match. When Richard asked him to sign the approval form, Daniel calmly pushed it back across the table. I can't approve this. Richard frowned. Why not? Because these materials won't last. No one will notice. Daniel looked him straight in the eye. The families using that building will notice. Richard lowered his voice. Sign it. Daniel shook his head. I'm not putting my name on something that could put people at risk. The following morning, Daniel walked into Victoria's office carrying the documents. I think you should see this. After reviewing the paperwork, Victoria immediately launched an internal investigation. Within 48 hours, the audit confirmed everything Daniel had discovered. Richard had been cutting corners for years. Several previous projects had been quietly overcharged, and cheaper materials had been used without approval. The board of directors acted swiftly. Richard was dismissed from the company. Before leaving, he stopped beside Daniel's desk. You ruined my career. Daniel looked at him calmly. No, you ruined it yourself. Richard walked away without another word. Later that afternoon, Victoria gathered the entire staff in the company auditorium. She stood beside Daniel. I hired Daniel because he helped my mother, she began. Some people thought that wasn't enough. She paused. Today, he saved this company from making a decision that could have harmed hundreds of families. The room erupted in applause. Employees stood to their feet. Daniel felt embarrassed by the attention. He wasn't a hero. He had simply done what he believed was right. As the applause continued, Victoria smiled. She knew she'd made the right choice. But she had one more surprise planned for Daniel and Lily, a surprise that would change their lives forever. Months passed, and Daniel settled into his new role at Whitmore Technologies. For the first time since Emily's passing, life no longer felt like a constant struggle. He could pay the bills on time. The refrigerator was always full. Most importantly, he was home every evening to have dinner with Lily. One night, as they washed the dishes together, Lily smiled. "Dad?" "Yes, sweetheart." "You laugh a lot more now." Daniel paused. He hadn't realized it. "I guess I do. I think Mom would like that." Her words brought tears to his eyes. "So do I." A few days later, Victoria invited Daniel, Lily, and Margaret to the grand opening of Whitmore Technology's newest community center. More than 300 people attended. Local families, employees, reporters, and city officials filled the large hall. Daniel thought he had simply come to cut a ribbon. He was wrong. After thanking everyone for coming, Victoria stepped onto the stage. "There is one more reason we're gathered here today." She looked toward Daniel. "Several months ago, my mother was humiliated in a grocery store because she couldn't afford her shopping." The room became silent. A man who had very little chose to help her. He expected nothing in return. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know anyone was watching. She smiled warmly. "But one act of kindness changed my mother's life. And it reminded me why I started this company in the first place." Victoria turned toward Daniel. "Daniel, would you and Lily please join me on stage?" The audience applauded as they walked forward. Lily held her father's hand tightly. Victoria handed Daniel a small wooden box. "I've already given you a job. But this gift isn't from a CEO." She looked toward Margaret. "It's from a grateful daughter." Daniel slowly opened the box. Inside was a single brass key. He looked confused. "What does this open?" Victoria smiled through tears. "A home." The audience gasped. Daniel stared at her. "I don't understand." Victoria pointed toward a large screen behind the stage. A photograph appeared. It was a beautiful 3-bedroom house with a wide front porch, a white picket fence, and a maple tree in the front garden. "The house is 5 minutes from Lily's school," Victoria said. "It has no mortgage, no debt. It's yours." Daniel was speechless. I can't accept this." Victoria gently shook her head. "Then don't think of it as a reward. Think of it as one family helping another." Daniel looked down at Lily. Tears streamed down her face. "Dad, does this mean we'll finally have a yard?" He knelt and hugged her tightly. "Yes, sweetheart. We'll have a yard, and you can have the puppy you've dreamed about." Daniel laughed through his tears. "I think we can finally talk about that." The crowd wiped away tears as father and daughter embraced. Even Margaret couldn't hold back her emotions. She whispered to herself, "Robert, if only you could see this." But Victoria wasn't finished. She smiled and said, "There's one last surprise waiting outside." Everyone turned toward the doors, wondering what could possibly come next. Everyone followed Victoria outside. Parked in front of the community center was a moving truck. Beside it stood the beautiful white house from the photograph. The crowd smiled as Lily squeezed her father's hand. "Dad, is that really our house?" Daniel looked at Victoria. "You've already done more than enough." Victoria shook her head. "No, Daniel. My mother spent years teaching me that success means nothing if you don't use it to help others." She glanced at Margaret, who smiled proudly. "I almost forgot that lesson. You reminded me." Victoria handed Lily another small envelope. Curious, Lily opened it. Inside was a certificate with a picture of a golden retriever puppy. Lily's eyes grew wide. "The puppy!" Victoria laughed. "His name is Charlie. If you still want him, he's waiting in the garden." Lily let out a joyful squeal and raced through the gate. Seconds later, a fluffy golden retriever puppy came running straight toward her. Charlie leaped into her arms, covering her face with happy puppy kisses. The crowd burst into laughter and applause. Daniel watched his daughter playing with Charlie. For years, he had prayed for moments like this. Not riches, not luxury, just peace. As the excitement settled, Victoria asked everyone to gather one last time. She turned to the reporters covering the event. "I want people to understand something. This story isn't about a billionaire helping a single father." She looked at Daniel. "It's about a single father who helped an elderly woman when he believed she had nothing to offer him. Money didn't change this story. Kindness did." The reporters lowered their cameras for a moment, moved by her words. A few weeks later, Daniel and Lily were fully settled into their new home. The front porch quickly became Lily's favorite place to read after school. Charlie chased squirrels across the backyard every afternoon. And every Friday evening, there was always one extra chair at the dinner table. Margaret never had to spend another Friday alone. She became family. Sometimes she brought homemade pies. Sometimes Daniel grilled burgers. Sometimes she brought homemade pies. Sometimes Daniel grilled burgers. Sometimes Lily insisted everyone play board games until bedtime. The house was filled with laughter again. Exactly the kind Emily would have loved. One autumn afternoon, Daniel and Lily visited Harper's Market, the same grocery store where everything had begun. As they waited at the checkout, Daniel noticed a young mother quietly removing baby formula from her basket after realizing she couldn't afford it. Without hesitation, Daniel stepped forward. "I'll cover it." The young woman looked embarrassed. "I can't let you do that." Daniel smiled. "Years ago, someone taught me that kindness grows when you pass it on." Lily grinned beside him. "It's our family's favorite tradition." The cashier smiled as the young mother's eyes filled with grateful tears. Standing nearby, Margaret quietly watched the moment unfold. She leaned toward Victoria and whispered, "You see?" Victoria nodded. "It was never about the money." It never was. Months later, a bronze plaque was installed outside the Whitmore Community Center. It didn't mention billions. It didn't mention business. It simply read, "One act of kindness can change a life. One life can change a community. Never underestimate the power of helping a stranger." Daniel smiled every time he walked past it, because he knew it was true. All he had done was buy groceries for a lonely woman. He never imagined that one small act of compassion would give his daughter a brighter future, reunite a family, inspire an entire community, and remind thousands of people that the greatest wealth in life isn't measured by money. It's measured by the kindness we choose to give when no one is watching. Thank you for reading. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another heartwarming story. And before you go, tell us in the comments, what's the kindest thing a stranger has ever done for you? Your story might inspire someone else today.